Hi everyone, I'm Ilana Gershlovitz, the director of the Star Academy and Catch Up Kids. I'm also the author of Saving My Sons, A Journey with Autism. Welcome to the Mama Movement.
The name Ilana Gershlovitz. She's our guest today, a mother, an author of Saving My Sons, A Journey of Autism, and a lawyer who immersed herself in research for saving her sons. This is who we are with today, a person who has been awarded for being the most influential woman in business and education. She started ABA therapy in South Africa. If you are not in awe of how I just introduced her, welcome to the Mama Movement for this interview. Ilana, welcome to the Mama Movement. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really want to speak about your journey. You are incredible, an author, a lawyer. What you have achieved for so many parents, not just locally, but internationally, has changed my perspective on how we as moms are the best researchers there are out there. So I'd like you to first share with me, I know the best way to understanding who you are is by reading your book, Saving My Sons, but can you briefly tell me, how did you end up here, the journey with your sons?
They say that mothers do better research than the FBI. And when your son is diagnosed with autism, your whole world falls to pieces. My world certainly completely broke down when that word autism rang through my ears. I'll never forget the day the doctor delivered the diagnosis. Your son has autism, goodbye and good luck. And that's how we left the doctor's office. At the time, I was pregnant with my second, and we really didn't even know whether we should keep the pregnancy. That's where our journey started. Our whole world changed in an instant. And this word autism descended upon us like a grey cloud. But I was resolute to find solutions. And it's now been 20 years. I can look back and I can tell parents, I've already watched the movie of autism, so I know what's going to happen. And I had to write Saving My Sons, A Journey with Autism, because I wanted parents and professionals to truly understand the makeup of autism, understand that it's a treatable condition, and that there are some children that can do a 360 from autism.
That's amazing, and we're going to discuss that in detail. I want you to share, what are the stats of autism, if you do know them locally in South Africa and globally, and what is your definition and your understanding? Because coming from a medical background, we are taught so little, and I think there's a reason for that in mainstream medical Western society, but there's so much help and we can do so much for them. So let's explain, what exactly is autism and what are the stats?
That's such a good question. People think that they're just neurodiverse. They're born with a brain wired differently. According to my research, that's not exactly how autism evolves. Autism is a digestive disorder. There are metabolic imbalances, and the children often have immune issues. This is something definitely to look into, something definitely to research. So very much at the outset, when you ask me what is autism, what I've just said now completely conflicts what you would have learned at medical school. Because at medical school, autism is defined in terms of the DSM-5. Autism is a spectrum diagnosis. On the one end of the spectrum, we can have a nonverbal child. On the other end of the spectrum, we can have a child who's vocal, who can go to school, but can have difficulties with making friends, or difficulties with something we call perspective taking, social, picking up social cues. They can have eccentricities. What I can tell the moms today really is that, no matter where your child is on the spectrum, it's not a superpower. It is a very serious condition that does require the right treatments. And the good news is that you can help them so much no matter where they are on the spectrum, and they can make improvements, and the nonverbal child can learn to communicate, and the child higher on the spectrum can learn to function and to go to school and to make friends. So there is so much hope, and that's my message today. Just to get back to your question, what are the stats? And so in South Africa, there's not proper body taking stats on autism, but we kind of go according to the CDC, Center for Disease Control. The stats that they released last year in 2025 was absolutely shocking. We were looking now at 1 in 33. And if you look at years before, like let's go 10 years back, the rates of autism have increased exponentially. And we can get to the question, well, why are we seeing such an explosion of the diagnosis autism?
That completely makes sense. And I've even seen some studies or predictive studies that are suggesting that possibilities of autism in kids going forth by 2030 could be 1 in 5 or 1 in 3. We should be asking the question why and what has changed. I wanted to share with our viewers, you have 3 sons. 2 have been diagnosed with autism. 1, you have completely have reversed. There is curability, there is treatment. What have you done, and what would you tell parents who are receiving this diagnosis? How can they change that? What can they do?
I'm so glad that we're talking about this. And yes, I have 3 boys. My oldest, David, he was diagnosed at 2 and he's now 23 years old. David is profoundly autistic. So that means that we caregivers, we're not parents. I want parents to really understand that distinction. Having said that, even though David will live with us, because he's received the right educational intervention and 20 years of a medical treatment protocol, he has a level of functionality and independence which gives him and us quality of life. So David communicates with an iPad, he pushes buttons and it's got voice output. We fought very hard for him to develop vocal speech, and my message to parents today is it doesn't matter how old your child is, don't ever give up on your child's vocal speech. When David was 12 and 13, we were still working with him, still helping him to produce consonants and vowels for speech. He uses some vocal language and then he uses his iPad to communicate. Because of a teaching methodology called Applied Behavior Analysis, ABA, he has learned to cook in the kitchen. He can follow a recipe, he makes pizzas, he makes stews, we feed homeless people. He is so excited about his menu for the week, what he's going to be cooking in the kitchen, and he's happy. He's got a good quality of life. He enjoys to go shopping for the ingredients. And so we've come a very, very long way. So that's David's story. As your parents will read in my book, Saving My Sons, A Journey with Autism came knocking on my door a second time. And my youngest, Aaron, at the age of 17 months, the symptoms of autism unfolded in front of our eyes. We couldn't believe it. A second time. We were very brave to have a third child, and we did. We knew there was a risk, but we took a risk. I can confidently tell everybody I am now properly traumatized. I am. We definitely suffer from post-traumatic stress. But this little one at 17 months, autism unfolded within a few days and we lost him. Boxing gloves on. We immediately ensured that he would receive ABA 7 hours a day. So I had tutors trained in this methodology coming to my house 7 hours a day, every day, Monday to Friday. We also did a lot for him medically. So we'll talk about that, but diet and nutrition is important. Trying to investigate and treat what were the triggers, and that can be a little bit different for every child. But for Aaron, we were able to identify, what had triggered and caused the cascade of events that plunged him into this diagnosis called autism. And today, Aaron is 13 years old. He's in high school. When we started out, he couldn't form consonants and vowels to make words. He had an apraxia, which is a speech motor planning challenge.
Yes.
Today, he's in grade 8, he's in high school, and he has recovered from autism. Recovery means you are indistinguishable from your peers. you have been re-diagnosed. He had a full educational psychologist assessment. In fact, every year we continue to check on him, and he has an assessment to check that he's on peer level and he's passed his assessments. And he's in a mainstream school with no support. That is what recovery means. Now, I will just quickly mention that some people listening today will say, that's not possible, he wasn't autistic to start. There'll be a million reasons they'll struggle to believe it. Please do your research. There are thousands of children that have made a 360 turnaround from a diagnosis of autism. Not every child will recover. There is definitely not just one cure for autism. Every child is a unique learner and requires different treatments depending on how they present, but recovery is possible.
I think you're so brave in what you're doing, and being here and sharing this story, I can tell you there are a lot of moms watching that will see hope. And that's what we need to give moms, the hope, because when there is possibility, a cure, so anything you can do as a mom to make sure that your little human can be the best that they can be, that's what we need. We need hope. So thank you for doing that. I understand in many, many conditions, not just autism, the gut-brain connection is it's imperative. It has the link to so many chronic diseases that we could prevent. It has the link to so many psychology diseases that we can present. But more in your case, and I know that you have in both your sons gone through extreme medical treatments in changing this. So tell us about the gut-brain connection, what you understand in terms of autism and how you have treated that for your boys.
It's so nice to be here today and to talk to you about the gut-brain connection, because when parents leave a doctor's office in South Africa, autism has and is still being viewed as a psychiatric disorder. And the parents leave the office very often with psychiatric medication as first-line treatment. So it's very important to consider the gut-brain connection, the microbiome. And so we know now, after 30 years of research, and the research is there, that's facts, going back to my lawyer roots. This is not my opinion. The research papers are there. You can go and find them. But there is definitely now confirmed that there's a link between the gut and the brain. And so we find with autistic children that, first of all, they're picky eaters. So the parents are really struggling to feed them. The mom will say to me, oh, my son only eats pizza, noodles, and chocolate and drinks Coke. Okay, so now for any child, that's not going to be great. We know that these children are allergic to gluten and dairy. We know that there's so many children that show marked improvement when we remove gluten and dairy, sugar from the diet. And so diet is very, very important, because if the gut can't digest and break down the foods that they're eating, it's going to cause allergy. Allergy is going to cause an inflammatory response. And that's why we're looking at this gut-brain connection. Also, sometimes, the children in early life, being a doctor, something can happen at birth, or they can get sick in the first 2 years of life. They could have many courses of antibiotics. Maybe they get ear infections. This is usually how autism develops. So the antibiotics is going to knock the gut flora. And so we will then land up with an imbalanced gut flora because there's too many bad guys in the gut. And that's really going to affect the child on the spectrum's behavior. It's going to affect their appetite. It's going to affect their learning ability. A lot of the children are suffering from a gut disorder, and we are giving them psychiatric medication. If there was a child with diabetes, would we give them psychiatric medication, or would we look into their glucose, sugar, and insulin? So we've got to be very careful with these children, because they can have very sore tummies, they cannot feel well, they can restrict their food intake, they can be nutrient deficient, they can be missing essential vitamins and minerals that they need for proper brain function. And so if your gut is not digesting the food properly, you're not extracting essential vitamins and minerals that your brain needs for proper brain function.
Yes.
It will affect your focus in the classroom. It's going to affect your ability to speak and to develop as you should in early childhood. So I really want to encourage the parents listening today to speak to their pediatricians about investigating the gut-brain connection.
we speak about what's called dysbiosis. So the inability of your gut to have the good bacteria, which feeds positivity, the mitochondria, everything functional in the body. And when that is in dysbiosis or not in the correct ratio of what we require, we see disease, dis-ease. And a lot of that is what is caused by a lack of, or this integration, this lacking of integration in our body, in our gut. And I've seen it with many people, and a lot of guests that I'm going to have on here speak about gut-brain connection. It has changed so many lives in so many ways when we understand really what the gut can do. Because if it's not functioning correctly, you are now storing toxins. You're not absorbing what you need in terms of nutrition. You cannot absorb nutrients. You cannot absorb your vitamins. There are deficiencies, and when there are deficiencies, you can't function, and that's how disease develops. So in totality, what you've just said is it's so important to understand what the gut-brain connection is. And I'm really grateful that you've explained that. And I'm sure you've done extensive research. I know you've been all across the world doing this, speaking on platforms with huge, incredible doctors with centers overseas for autism. And I hope that parents understand the necessities of understanding this. And I will definitely share more about the gut-brain connection going forward. Ilana, what do you feel as a mom was your biggest failure and biggest success in dealing with your journey?
My biggest success, looking back now, almost 21 years later, is that I have no regrets. I did it all. I did not take no for an answer. I was not willing to accept that nothing would become of my son. I turned the world upside down. I screamed at the universe. I fought this battle on a physical level and on a spiritual level. And I will continue this battle for my son until I draw the last breath. So when I look back, I feel successful in the fact that we held it together, that we didn't get divorced, that we didn't fight each other. You know, my husband and I, that we fought autism. Often there's such a breakdown because autism is a family diagnosis. It's not just about the child, it's about the family unit, and it causes so much stress in the home. My advice to parents is sometimes I would win a battle and sometimes my husband would win a battle. So we would take turns and we kind of held it together. We didn't let autism break us. You know, I always say that autism broke my wings, but it forgot I had claws.
I love that.
So, and just a message to the parents listening today who are walking this journey, find ways to keep your hope alive. Hope is the best medicine of all. And that's my advice to parents to achieve those results that you want. If one school's not working, find another school that will work. If one medication is not working, find another medication, increase the dose, keep going. You've got this. Miracles happen. And, you know, another important ingredient to my success when I look back 20 years is gratitude. Gratitude is a magnet for miracles. I'm so grateful sitting out today that I have 2 other boys that contribute to our world, that I have a husband, and that I have a roof over my head, that I can get up every day and look after my son in the way that he needs looking after, and that I didn't fall to pieces. So really sit down and think about gratitude, because that's really an important ingredient to success when you're walking along this autism journey. But then there was a second part to your question. You have to remind me.
The failures and the successes. I think have you spoken about the successes? Maybe you can share if there's some part you feel you failed in.
The failures. I think a lot of parents will relate to what I'm saying today, but you kind of feel that you weren't able to give the other sibling or siblings the attention that they did deserve.
The mom guilt.
Yes. So my second son, Ellie, I have 3 boys. David is 23 years old. He is profoundly autistic. And it's very important that people hear those words, profoundly autistic. Actually, the CDC 3 years ago came with a category of data on profound autism. So we must very much be aware of respecting the spectrum of autism. Yes, we have higher functioning individuals on the spectrum, but there are also profound individuals on the spectrum. So my son David is 23, he's profoundly autistic, but we have made a life for him within his profound autism. I have my second son, he's 21 years old. Because of his brother, he's studying medicine, he's in 4th year, and he wants to cure autism because he grew up with a brother who suffered and who this diagnosis of autism, got a hold of his brother. And my second son, Ellie, was witness to that, and that really motivated him and drove him to study medicine. And then, of course, I have my third son, Aaron, and he recovered from autism. But talking about my failure, I really think when my second son, Ellie, was growing up, I was so engrossed in David's needs. I was so deep in this battle of autism that I definitely neglected Ellie. But now when we look back, yes. And actually if parents read my book, Saving My Sons, you will see Ellie's voice in the book. And Ellie says, I had to be a good boy at school. My parents were already going through so much. I had to be the one to do well at school. I couldn't be the class clown. They wouldn't be able to deal with it. So I think my failure is him having that guilt that he had to perform, he had to succeed, he had to be a good boy. I don't think Ellie ever had the room just to be a naughty boy because we just didn't have the capacity to deal with it.
I understand. It's tough, I think, for all the parents that are walking the same journey to have other children. Firstly, it's the fear of when you are pregnant, is this going to happen to my second child, my third child? It's a worry. You don't want to have to go through that again. And then on top of that, they are normal. Now you're always wondering at the back of your mind, what do I do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Or how can I make sure that I do better for? It's always a worry. I think even to a parent who is raising a daughter, we always worry. We'll worry till we die. But it's such a brave thing to acknowledge that, because then when you see it, you know how you can do better. You have started Star Academy, and you were the first person to platform and bring ABA to South Africa. These are huge steps forward in the autism community. Can you tell us what Star Academy is about and how that can help many parents out there?
Thank you. Yes, so Star Academy was established 20 years ago. When I say that, I can't believe it. I'm so old. Where did the time go? How can it be possible that Star Academy was established 20 years ago? It all obviously started with my quest to turning the world upside down, to finding treatments and solutions for David. And at the Star Academy, we follow the teaching methodology of applied behavior analysis, ABA, methodology of teaching, rooted in psychology, based on positive reinforcement, first-line treatment for autism, certainly in America. And in many other countries, South Africa is still learning about ABA. Along our journey with David, we would fly overseas and we would keep looking, keep digging, because David was so tough. We couldn't get him where we wanted him to be. We kept having to re-navigate. We kept having to start over. He forced us back to the drawing board many times. So I flew internationally a few times to find different treatments, and then we would incorporate that into David's education program. And today at the Star Academy, we have many tools, especially also for kids who are nonverbal, to help them rehabilitate the fact that they're struggling to produce words. It can be so debilitating, it really can. But Star Academy partnered with the American-based Center for Autism and Related Disorders 20 years ago. I had a conference. I invited the founding director to South Africa, and it was actually groundbreaking for South Africa at the time, because it was the first time that, anyone presented on this is actually a treatable condition. But that's when we brought ABA to South Africa. and we established the Star Academy. And today we help hundreds of children, not only around South Africa, but also internationally. We now work with children in Uganda and in Ghana and in the UK and around the world. And so we provide one-on-one instruction for the children on the spectrum. We work with children as old as 17 months, and we have teenager and we have some older individuals. We tailor make a program for each unique learner. So we don't group them together in a classroom, and where they receive their instruction really depends on their individualized program. So some children have a higher level of functioning, and we just need to facilitate them at a school. Some children
integrating them into society.
Exactly. Some children don't yet have prerequisite skills for school, and then they could attend our centers, or we're doing home programs for them, trying to get the skills in place so that they can land up in a school placement. And so it's very, very child specific.
Okay. I think it's extraordinary what you have done. And I just want to touch on a few key concepts. One of the other things, you speak about treatments. There are many different treatments, and my understanding of those is toxin, heavy metals that are exposed in our children at very young ages. So you can speak about methylation, chelation, immunity, gut-brain connection, neurodevelopment. If I had to define autism, those are the pillars I would speak about. And that's where essentially I think that's how you can combat and find some sort of help beyond what we just understand in the DSM criteria. Am I correct by saying that?
You absolutely are. I love how you just defined autism. You smashed it. You did a better job than me. That was amazing. You absolutely nailed that definition. That was amazing.
Thank you. I see that you have integrated with a lot of doctors from overseas, one of those being Dr. Antonucci. If there's one person, doesn't have to be him, but one person that has, in your journey, created the biggest change for you, what did that doctor or medical person do for you, and how do you feel that changed for you?
I cast my mind back to the first conference my husband Martin attended in Chicago, probably 20-something years ago. It was very soon after David's diagnosis, and he would often attend conferences on autism to try and, get information on the latest medical treatments. And at one of those conferences, he met Dr. Jeff Bradstreet, who actually passed away about 10 years ago, but he was a pioneer in the field of autism, and he was David's doctor for 11 years. And he helped us turn the world upside down to find treatments. And I think he taught me so much of what I know today about the diagnosis, as well as how to treat the condition. And I think what I found so comforting about having been his patient was that there was always something new to try. He never gave up, and he always asked the why question. When I speak to parents today, and parents consult me on a daily basis about their children, I am a parent coach, and I do guide parents in terms of, my child's been diagnosed with autism, what now? Yeah, what do we do? But just going back to the early years where I was still learning, it's so important that you're working with a doctor who can ask the why question. And Dr. Jeff Bradstreet always asked the why question. Today, when I speak to parents, I'll say, if your doctor can't ask, why is my child a picky eater? Why is my child not speaking? Why is my child struggling to focus? It's not the right doctor.
That's our job. It's to ask why and to investigate and find the cause, not just treat the symptoms.
I think that is so important. And what you mentioned now is exactly what parents come up against when they attended a doctor's office who prescribes medication, and most of the time they are not asking why.
Ilana, I think you've shared so much with us, but I want you to leave our parents with a message, not just as a mom, but an advocate for autism, something that has affected so many people around the world. What would you like to say to the moms that are getting these diagnoses?
Autism is treatable, and recovery for some is possible. And not every child will recover. But even if your child doesn't recover, your child can learn to communicate and can improve and can learn to do the things that at the moment seems to be impossible. I always say that the mission is fragile but possible. And, if you can't go through a window, if you can't go through a door, go through a window. And, if life throws you lemons, make orange juice and leave the world wondering how you did it. That's how you tackle a diagnosis of autism. And remember to keep your hope alive. How do you keep your hope alive? Keep going, keep trying. If one intervention doesn't work, find another one. If one medication doesn't work, find another one. If one doctor is not helping you, move to the next doctor. Keep your hope alive.
Your resilience is admirable, and we are so grateful that you're here and that you could share so much knowledge with us. Thank you so much for being part of the Mama Movement, Ilana.
Thank you so much for having me.